Kuzuzangpo, welcome to Bhutan e-learning program. This is an environmental science lesson for Key Stage 5, that is for classes 11 and 12. I am Mahindra Timsina from Deshinchaling Higher Secondary School. In this lesson, we are going to learn about land conservation, land waste management, and entrepreneurship based on land waste. First of all, we have been talking a lot about waste. Basically, in the topic pollution, we talked about a variety of wastes. All in all, land waste is becoming one major issue because of its persistence in nature and because it disrupts the physical ambience of the environment. So, in this lesson, basically, if you look at the outline, first you will be learning about mechanism of land waste management, mechanisms of land use, and several other topics related to the land waste. So by the end of the lesson, you are supposed to do few things. You should be able to firstly explain the land conservation mechanisms in and around our country. Second one, you should be able to identify some of the land wastes and also hazard related to land waste. And third, you should be able to identify or explore some of the entrepreneurship areas which we can develop based on the principles of land waste management. Now let us move on. First important thing is land management. So what do you understand when I say land management? I hope there's something that clicked in your mind. So when we say land management, we know there are a lot of different types of use of land. For instance, within Bhutan, if you look at the land use, we use land in different ways. For instance, agriculture is one good example. Industries, other things are there. So there are varieties of ways by which the land is used. That's why it is important to manage land. So to understand land management, firstly, land management is managing the use and development of the land resources. Why? Why is land management important? Now let us look around. As I already mentioned some of the examples, we are using land. So, globally, there are a lot of issues, mainly because of development. Now, if you look at development, there are different aspects. For instance, infrastructural development. Similarly, industrial development. Apart from that, the growth in agriculture because of the increasing food demand. Because of all these processes, the pressure on land has increased. And because of the increasing pressure, there is devastating effect. A lot of devastating effect on the land has been observed. A simple example, construction leads to modification of landscape and other related issues based on that. That is why it is important to manage land use. Now, as you know about the land management, let us talk a little bit about conservation. That is land conservation. We always talk about conservation. We always say conserve this, conserve environment, conservation of land, conservation of water resources. Why is it important? Did you ever come across the topic conservation before? Why is it important again? It is important to conserve land because conservation is a kind of practical approach which can help us firstly protect land resources and also balance the use of land resources to meet or to create a balance between the economic demand and to ensure that conservation is also done. Or, in other words, meeting the economic demand at the same time without compromising the quality of environment. That's basically the principle of conservation. So, here, when I say land conservation, it is creating or maintaining a balance between land use at the same time ensuring the quality of the land is not compromised. For instance, if you look at a simple example, agriculture is one big thing, a big application, or let us say a field where land is used. So, to minimize the impact on land by agriculture, we can adopt some of the methods which can minimize soil erosion. Example, using terraces, or terracing is one best example to prevent soil erosion so that the soil fertility is not lost. So that was land conservation. Now let us look at some of the common mechanisms of the land conservation. So if you look at the figure I have shown here, the chart here, you can clearly see there are 4 different ways. The first one, it is legal instruments. Second one, agricultural practices. Third one, mine reclamations. And the fourth one, it is belief system. Firstly, let us look at what is legal instrument. Now, in Bhutan, we have some frameworks developed that deal with conservation and management of land and land use. For instance, Forest and Nature Conservation Act 1995, and the second one is Land Act of Bhutan 2007. Now, if we look at these acts, they are basically designed and implemented to ensure that the land use is done in a sustainable manner. Now, when I say in a sustainable manner, I mean here ensure that the land use is also done, plus at the same time we also meet the need of environmental conservation without compromising the quality of land. The second aspect here is agricultural practices. What are some of the agricultural practices which can help us conserve land or protect the land quality? So I have here 3 images if you look at. On my right side, there's one common method of contour plowing. So how does contour plowing help to protect the quality of land? Contour plowing here is a simple way by which the plowing of land is done based on the contour lines. On doing that, it will prevent soil erosion. And when there is no soil erosion, then the decrease in the fertility of land is prevented. On my left here, I have second one, the most common practice in Bhutan, that is terracing. Especially since Bhutan is a mountainous country, the chances of soil erosion is very high. Of course, we know there are a lot of forests, but I am here talking about agricultural lands. So in that case, we make terraces. And when we make terraces, what we see is water is not allowed to flow down continually. And when water doesn't flow in a continual manner, then the nutrients are not carried down from the mountains or from that particular area. And that will help us again prevent the loss of soil fertility. And every now and then I'm talking about loss of soil fertility because that is one of the most prominent effects of agriculture when we don't take care of land. And the last image here it is strip cropping. So strip cropping basically means planting or growing of crops again along the contour. So strip cropping helps to prevent the flow of water, or in other words, it prevents surface runoff and soil erosion. So that's all about agricultural practices. Now let us look at mine reclamation. I am again talking about mine reclamation here because energy sources or energy resources. Mining is one of the most prominent activity that helps us derive resources from nature. And because of mining, there is the destruction of landscape. So if you look at this figure, you can see there's one natural ecosystem from which resources have been derived by mining. And because of that, the landscape itself is changed. And mining here is one major disturbance. So how to recover it? There are three alternatives if you look at. Firstly, restoration, which means restoring that particular area and making it similar to what it was before. We can do it by planting of trees or bringing in plants which were initially there. Rehabilitation is planting of trees, but it may not convert that particular patch of land back into how it used to be before. The third practice here is replacement. Replacement here means using that patch of land for some other purposes. It may not be like recovering what was there. Instead, it involves planning for some activities there, maybe something like developing some sort of parks so that further degradation of that particular area is prevented. So that's what replacement is. Now, as we studied about three different ways, the fourth way is associating the beliefs and culture of that particular area to conservation. There is a field called as ethnoecology. We see everywhere throughout the globe the practices, the culture, and the environment is always linked. Some it might be towards conservation, and some it might be towards land use. So in that case, we can always link our culture, our beliefs towards conservation. One simple example, if you look in Bhutan, there are some lakes which are sacred, which people conserve because they have some religious association. So that can be one good way of conserving. People make use of resources in and around that particular area. At the same time, they conserve that area, protect that area. And that is one important way of conserving the land as well as the resources in that particular area. So that's all about the mechanisms, or let us say the land conservation mechanisms. Now let us move to waste, that is land waste and land waste management. So as we are talking about land waste management, it is important for us to know land wastes. So let us think about some of the common wastes that is in and around us, or that is produced in and around us. Can you think about some? If I give you some examples, plastic bottles, always, everywhere. Wrappers, chocolate covers, e-wastes. All these things are becoming one major concern because they are thrown, they are littered around. And these are one of the most prominent, let us say, wastes that pollute land. And in other terms, we even refer them as land pollutants. So land waste is becoming an increasing concern. Now let us look at this picture here. It shows one patch of land where a lot of waste is dumped. And another important thing here is some animals are there, some cattle are there. You see, if you observe that particular patch of land, you see the entire land surface is modified because there are no plants growing around. The ecosystem there is disrupted. Plus, the animals there, they are feeding on waste, which will certainly have some health impact on them. So, land waste is one major issue, one major problem in our country, or let us say throughout the globe, as the development process proceeds. Now let us look at some of the prominent impact of land waste. So what are some of the impacts? If I have to classify here, there can be environmental impacts, there can be health impacts basically. So if you look at, first one is land pollution and degradation of land. Second one, reduction in the fertility of soil. Third one, once the land waste is accumulated, then some of the contaminants which come from the waste can enter the food chain, causing one big issue called biomagnification. The fourth one, when it hampers the soil fertility, it even leads to decrease in the crop yield. And the last one, health effect. When I say health effect, we have health of the ecosystem, that is environmentally, and the other way is human health, because the pollutants are becoming one major cause for the health of both ecosystem as well as human. So that's all about the impact of the waste. Now I have here one hierarchy which we call as waste management hierarchy. So when I introduce the hierarchy, actually I am introducing here the practices that we can implement on and which can help us to deal with the land pollution. So there is one inverted triangle, and there are different practices. First thing, refuse. The second one, reduce. Third one, reuse. Fourth one, repair. Fifth one, regift. Sixth one, recycle. Seventh one, recover. We even call them as 7 R's. And if you look at the diagram there, you see as we come from refuse towards recover, again the choice. Refuse is most desirable, and the recover option is least desirable. So out of all, let me just explain one or two of them which can help us to minimize the generation of waste. For instance, reduce. Reducing the consumption of products which have a lot of plastics and all those things can help minimize the land pollution, or in other terms, waste generation. The other important one is reuse. Using some of the products again and again. There are some products which we can use again and again. That can minimize land pollution. For instance, polythene bags. We do not have to get a new polythene bag every time we go to market. If we make a practice of reusing the one again and again, then that will also decrease the burden. And third one is repair. We should learn something from this. Repair. Every time, let me give you one example. Cell phone. Whenever our cell phone, maybe the screen breaks, there are some people who instead of repairing, they throw it, they buy a new one. You see, I generate one cell phone as e-waste. Instead of them, that if I repair and use it, it is going to last for some times. And also, it is going to decrease the e-waste. So these are some of the ways by which we can minimize the generation of land waste. So there are others. I want you to explore on them and see how much of those practices are actually practiced in our daily lives. We talked a lot now. The final thing for today's lesson is entrepreneurship. When I say that, I'm talking here about entrepreneurship based on land waste. So, what is entrepreneurship? If you look in general terms, it is establishment of some business idea in order to identify some raw materials, develop some services and products, and make a living. That is basically entrepreneurship, making a living from something. Here, land waste, because of the increasing waste issues and increase in the quantity of waste, we have certain important examples within our country by which people are using land waste, processing them, and making a living, creating some business ideas. So let me quote here two important projects which are going on. The first one is Greenaway. It was founded in 2010 by Mr. Karmayuntin. He is the founder and CEO of Greenaway. Now, if we look at Greenaway, how does it function? It is based here at Thimphu, and if we look at, there are some basic activities it carries out which are really important. First one, it is collection of waste from the city. After that, second important thing is segregation of waste, which means from the total waste, the waste is segregated into dry waste and wet waste. The dry waste is further segregated and the usable forms are processed and taken for some use, recycling and reuse. Whereas the wet ones, they are transported founded and used for the production of composting. Apart from that, one very important thing that Greenaway is doing is educating youth. It educates youth on the waste management practices. So I have here two images to show some of the activities that are occurring or that they are carrying out in their organization. Now, if you look at the second project that is going on, the name itself is quite explanatory actually. It was founded in 2014 by Mr. Rikesh Gurung. He is the founder and CEO. Now, if we look at, was established in order to minimize the plastic waste generated. And in simple terms, it is using plastic waste for blacktopping of roads. So what this project does is, it collects the plastic wastes and processing it with some other raw materials, it produces one material called as polymerized bitumen. And this polymerized bitumen is used for blacktopping purposes. So because of that, there are two important benefits. First one, environmentally. As per the study made by the organization, it can reduce the pollutants going to the landfills by about 30 to 40%, which means it is minimizing the waste generated by almost 40%. And second important thing is the road constructed using polymerized bitumen is found to last more than the normal blacktopping, the normal bitumen, which saves a lot of money. So you see, such projects can help us minimize environmental impact as well as minimize the economic or the financial pressure and save money. So that is quite important if you look at. Towards the end of this lesson, first, now let us look at one important picture here. We can see one lady waving something out of plastic. You see, this image carries one important message to everybody, which means if we think about, there are ways by which we can manage our own wastes. For instance, there are some products, some wastes, which are usable, which can be processed at our household level. So, if we think, if we become creative and use them, I think we can contribute to minimizing land pollution and also minimizing the impact of the land waste on the environment. So as we learned a lot of things about land management, land conservation, land waste management, and also entrepreneurship based on the waste. So let us do something. I want you to carry out some activities. Firstly, explore on some of the ideas to manage the waste that we generate in our household by using that hierarchy where I showed you 7 R's. Second one, do a small study and see how the beliefs of a community can contribute to the conservation of land and natural resources. And the third one is I want you to explore on the impact of e-waste on human health. So that's all for today's lesson. I hope you all enjoyed the lesson. So let us try exploring more and understanding more about the environment, about the land, and altogether contribute towards the promotion of nature conservation. Stay safe. Thank you.